right, so let's get started. The first thing we had on our agenda was to approve the meeting minutes. However, Adam was just noting that they didn't get attached in the packet. So maybe we want to table that and do it at the next meeting. Does that sound all right? And we can just dive right into our main agenda item, which is the recommendation to the Portland Charter Commission. So we do have materials on that. There is the proposal in a PDF. I got a chance only to just glance over it today. I don't know, Adam, have you had a chance to look at it?
I've looked at it once.
Okay. Do we want to take a minute and just read through it, maybe?
Sure.
Okay. So we'll just pause for a couple of minutes and then we'll resume. Okay. And I was wondering, Emily, I know you did the major draft of this. Is that correct? Do you want to kind of walk us through it, or do you have something to kind of get us started?
I am happy to walk you through it. And maybe we can go through each section and discuss it and use it more as a basis for a discussion. I think the idea was coming out of the Charter Commission's Education Committee meeting a little over a week ago. I believe, Anna, was that last Wednesday?
I think so, yeah.
A week ago Wednesday. We put together what were common themes through the presentation that the superintendent provided, as well as myself and Ms. Trevorrow. And our starting point was talking about the principles that came up during our workshop. And those three principles, as they're articulated here, would be, all geared around improving local governance. I guess that is the object of the Charter Commission's work, but specifically making local governments more democratic, more participatory, and to equalize the footing of the school board with respect to the city council. And then that is going back to what we discussed in the memo that AGA presented to us during our workshop, that really underscores that or articulates that state law stipulates that the school board is not subordinate to the city council, but derives its duties and authority directly from the legislature. So the third principle here is really trying to better implement that. So the first, how we organized this was articulating the proposed change, and then the justifications, and then talking about which of these three principles the proposed change met. In some cases it was one, in some cases it was multiple principles. And maybe we can, talk through the proposed change, and whether this is the right change that we want to make, and then the justifications, and so all pieces of this, because I think is what we want to do is write a letter to the just to get us to the end point of this discussion. Eventually, I think the board wants to essentially have a cover memo with and then include this document or some version of this document. And the reason why I'm suggesting that is because we're able to actually articulate our justification on each issue, and so I feel like this might summarize everything in a more cohesive way than a long memo. I'll mention a couple of other things before we get into the substance, which is we learned. You'll remember that after coming out of our workshop, the superintendent asked AGA to go back and further research a few issues. And one was the extent to which we could be the municipal legislative body that approves a school budget rather than the city council before going to the voters. And she's working on a follow-up memo that says yes, that she believes that state law clearly indicates, although we haven't done it and other municipalities haven't done it, but she believes that it is completely permissible for the school board to be the municipal legislative body, meaning that we approve our budget and then send it to the voters. And so I don't know the update in terms of the timeline of when we expect that follow-up. I do think we should wait and get that document before, certainly before we finalize this document. She also looked more into bonding authority and whether we could independently bond. And I think her response there was yes, but it's pretty complex. And again, I haven't seen that complexity. And she also had some follow-up on procurement. And again, I believe her conclusion was, yes, we could do more of our own procurement. But again, I don't know, that's probably the issue I know the least about in terms of her more detailed analysis. So I think I'd expect that we get that memo, in the short term. So this starts with, and then I should mention that we listed these in order of importance, and we can decide whether we want to stick with that or not. But some of the changes we propose, I think, are really kind of core to achieving the goals that we laid out, and some would be nice, but are less critical. And so we wanted to articulate the changes in some kind of order of importance. So that's what we attempted to do. And certainly, by all means, we could have a conversation about moving things around here. But the first one was providing the school board budget autonomy by designating the school board as the municipal legislative body. The principles that it meets is that it enables us to have a more democratic local governments, and it equalizes our footing with the council. I would say there, for me, this one, like, it's both principles are strongly met here, and we get to some of the justification, but in a lot of ways, it doesn't make sense for the council to have this authority over the schools when they're not the ones who actually are elected to run the schools, and nor do they have the expertise in terms of what's needed in our budget. So I don't know if we want to just have a conversation now about the change and the justifications.
Yeah, let's do that. Kind of go through them one by one and just have a conversation around it. Adam, do you have anything off the top of your head at the moment?
On the first item, no, agreed. And just to highlight the point of being that the school board would approve the budget and then it will go to the voters. I think that's congruent with what I've heard. And when I just see the school board budget autonomy by designating it at the municipal legislative body, for those that aren't following the words as carefully, it could appear that the school board can approve without voter approval, and that's not what we're saying.
Yusuf, do you have anything on that one?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah, I same thing. I support this for all the reasons listed, and I think, yeah, so the body that is allowed to appoint the municipal body, it can be the charter commission. It doesn't have to be the council, right?
It's just it would be articulated in the charter.
Okay.
Yeah, the council wouldn't have authority to make that determination.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing that we'd want to clarify. So I'm hearing that the jargon is kind of in the way here, and that we should clarify the proposed change in non-jargony language that makes clear that it's the voters the school board approves a budget, and then it goes to the voters for a referendum, and then perhaps somewhere we can articulate that we would, maybe in the first justification as written explains it in terms of the municipal body.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay, great. The next change would be to allow non-citizen residents to vote in municipal elections. And the principles this would meet would be to make our local governments both more democratic and more participatory. And a lot of the justifications as we articulated them came from some materials that Ms. Trevorrow shared with us from her work on this issue. So, Anna, I don't know if you want to take the lead on kind of walking through, talking about any of the justifications here.
I mean, I think the main justifications, it's about improving democracy and the fact that this is a direct issue for education because it involves families and it involves our students' parents' ability to participate in democracy. I was looking over it to see if there was anything that I felt like we needed to add. But off the top of my head, I couldn't think of anything. Did you use the resolution that we passed back in, I can't remember what year it was, 20?
I did. I looked at that as well. I pulled from all of the sources. I pulled a little bit less from the academic journal article that you sent, so I don't know if there was more there. That might be the only other, other than folks in the community providing us feedback or other board members. That was the one source that I didn't take a deep dive on.
Yeah, I mean, there was some talk in some of those articles about how, I mean, there are municipalities in the country that have experience with this and how it has particularly had a positive impact for the schools. I think it was even cited somewhere that there tends to be, there's like a correlation between support for funding for education when non-citizens have the right to vote. But that might have been a study from another country, I think.
No, that's right. And I actually tried to capture that in the first justification, but I might not have articulated it clearly.
Well, I haven't had an opportunity to like really thoroughly read it. So. Sorry. So, yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I agree with everything that's in here. Adam or Yusuf, do you have any thoughts on this one?
I really agree with this, and I know I work with asylee families, and they go through a lot of hardship about the healthcare, and where they get partial main care, which is not enough for them to. I don't know if the kids get full main care, but I would say this is going to be very supportive of their struggle.
Yeah.
I support the item and the justification, just friendly amendment. The first justification says non-resident instead of non-citizen voting.
Thank you.
Whenever this issue comes up, there's always discussion about what terminology to use, whether to use non-citizen or I think we started using the term legal resident. I don't know if maybe we want to, just pick something and make sure that it's used throughout.
Yeah, I would support something in that direction. It just flags for me that no human is illegal, and I don't want to reinforce the binary language that gets used in this area. But
yeah.
I can go on to the next one, which is adopting clean elections. And this has, I didn't go into, this has been such a long, torturous, policy in terms in the district. So I didn't go into details, and I don't think we need to, since others are and have, and we know there's a proposal. In any case, and so this meets the principles of more democratic and more participatory. And I don't know if there's justifications here that we would want to add.
I think it covers all my justifications, just that it equalizes the playing field and gets, private interest out.
yeah, for me, it's equity, right? Like who has the opportunity and what are the outcomes of who is represented in office. Which is, of course, what this justification is saying in a way. So, important to say it again with a fine point on equity, then that's great.
Okay. I think on any of these, if anyone wants to offer other language, please do. Happy to make edits and changes. I got I think the most substantive one was that Adam proposed so far, which is taking the jargon out of the first proposed change. But on the justifications, if you want to provide edits, I think you could go ahead and send them to me, and I'll work with Javier on just making the changes, and then I think figuring out the forum in which we bring this forward to the board. The next one is provide the city manager and superintendent, provide that both the city manager and superintendent jointly prepare and submit to the city council and school board a multi-year CIP. and this is about equalizing footing with the city council. You know, as folks know, what traditionally happens is that the city manager creates a CIP and lets us know essentially how much money we can bond for in a given year. And so this would be more, especially given our footprint across the city, and we know how this is played out, is that our facilities have huge unmet needs, that hopefully a process that is more where we have more equal footing will enable us to do better and to invest more and to plan in a better way. This has been a really tricky thing for us as we've tried to make capital investments, but then don't have continuity year after year and have to change plans and ditch plans. And so I think this would be a better, would lead to a better planning process.
I agree. This, the issue is certainly one that I understand, having, gone through the process many times. It's, it's kind of like that we just get handed something, and oftentimes it's the amount of debt that's rolling off. That's what we get, and our facilities are kind of backlogged with needs, right? And we just keep kind of pushing that off, and that's just the way that it is, and it has been forever. So, so what we get annually doesn't come close to meeting our needs. So to me, the problem is obvious, and the solution is, I don't know. It's not something that I necessarily, I think this is good. If this is what Javier and staff think would be helpful, I think that, I definitely support it. I see Roberto joined us. I just wanted to note that. Roberto, if you're listening, we are going through the proposed recommendations to the Charter Commission one by one, and we have already gotten through the first 1, 2, 3, and we're on the one about CIP. So I would say if you have anything on any of these, go ahead and chime in. But that's just where we are. And Adam, Yusuf, anything on this one?
What arose for me on this one is I think I understand the spirit and support it. And then when I look at what I'm reading in the proposed change and the justification, it's not entirely clear what the distinction is between, or is it not here? I thought I read it. Oh, no, I'm not seeing it. I thought I had seen that the are only consulted on the annual preparation of the CIP. So the distinction is that it's multi-year and not just annual. But I think we're trying to say something a little different in terms of consulted and the prepare and submit. And I guess I'm just curious if we're saying enough to differentiate those points here, or if we need to say a little bit more. That's what came up for me.
Honestly, I'd say on this one that we might need the superintendent and staff to take a deeper dive on this. So maybe this is a place, I think, Adam, you're raising a good point. And as I see it, and if you remember in Aga's memo, she had a chart at the back where she compared what different municipalities in Maine have done on a set of key issues, and this was one of them. And I think Auburn and maybe Lewiston, one other municipality, it looked like what you're saying. So both that there was more partnership in the creation of the CIP, and then the time horizon was longer. So those two issues. And I would think that those are both extremely valuable in terms of making, in terms of being able to make and plan around capital improvements. But I do think this one needs more staff attention.
Agree with all that.
Because I was on the last charter commission, when we talked about budget authority between the mayor and the manager, the language that we came up with was like, they will jointly work on it, and I now having some experience with that, I'm not sure that in practicality it gave sort of a clear enough direction or materialized in them being true equals on it. So maybe that's something to think about, that, what does kind of a joint presentation mean or look like? Not that I have any suggestions, but I think, perhaps staff, maybe, since they do this, every year, they have some recommendations.
Kathy, do you have any thoughts on this one?
I haven't necessarily participated in this particular process much, so I think that there are others on the staff that would probably have some more input on this. But yes, it'd be important to kind of see what that would look like.
Okay, I'll follow up with Javier on this one. And then the next proposed change was allowing the chair of the school board to fill any open school board seats with an interim appointment until the next election, provided the open seat would remain unfulfilled for more than 60 days. And the 60-day window is consistent with other appointment authority that's in the charter. And I don't know if you remember this precisely. Sorry, there's a plane going over my house. But this was the 60-day window was consistent with what's already in the charter for appointments. And, so this meets the more participatory, so the example here would be Jeff's seat, which, is going to be open unless the city council calls a special election for, 9 to 10 months. Is it that long? 9 months? Until it's filled in June. So the voters in District 5 have less representation right now before the school board. And so this is addressing that situation, as well as, the situation if sitting school board members are elected, for instance, to the city council, how we can fill those seats in a more in a quicker way, so that people don't lose representation on the school board during the period when they end their service to the school board and begin their service on the council.
Yeah, I don't remember actually what the outline process is for vacancies in the charter. I don't know, Emily, if you have that off the top of your head, but I was thinking that if it was a vacancy that was going to be, for a period of time, then it automatically triggered an election. But maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't know.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
That if there was a vacancy, that it automatically triggered an election, a special election, unless it was like within a certain time frame.
Yeah, that's not my understanding.
Okay.
My understanding is instead it's the next, that the election for the open seat happens at the next scheduled election. And so, for instance, for the District 5 seat, as well as for yours and Roberto seats, if you win in November, election to the City Council, those elections would all take place in June. And we do also, I think we also need to, I'm just realizing, fix another part of the charter, which is those elections would happen in June, but they would only be temporary. So the person, as the charter now states, the person who wins that election would have to rerun in November. So I think we'd also want to address that piece, because it's very awkward to have someone have to run twice within 6 months.
Yeah. Let's see, Roberto, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry that I came in late today and I missed part of the discussion. I'll go back and watch the recording. On this one, I guess I would say that if we advocate for there to be an appointing process to fill vacancies, then the sequence of the terms, right? The reason why someone would have to run on June and again in November, the sequence of the terms should remain as is, because the appointment then would be made with the understanding that it's only until November or until the end of the current term. Does that make, as opposed to doing both things, both appointing and starting the term from that point on? Not that that would be well suggested.
Yes, that is a good clarification. So just to, Mr. Rodriguez, just so I'm understanding completely what you're saying, or making sure that I'm hearing what you're saying, is if we had this authority now in the charter, I could appoint someone to the District 5 seat that's now open, and that person would serve until June when there's the next scheduled municipal election. At that time, the person who I've appointed could run or not, but then there would be the election to fill the seat, right?
I think that could potentially be an option, but I would say maybe your appointment could be for the duration of the term. So your appointment would take that person through November, not through June. It'd be unnecessary to have a June election.
I see. That is cleaner. Thank you for that.
So on this one, I'm not sure I totally agree with it personally. And if this is kind of the will of the board, it's certainly not something that I would block sending this forward as a package recommendation. But my hesitation around it is when you appoint somebody to fill a seat and they begin serving in that seat, and then they have to run for re-election, you've kind of handed them the advantages of incumbency. So they kind of have a leg up going into that election. It's like they're running for re-election as opposed to, an open seat. So that's I think we talked about this actually during the last charter commission, and that was sort of some of the pushback. And that's just my feeling about it is, for the sake of kind of equal playing field. Roberto, I see your hand is raised again.
That's a really good point, Anna. Could we consider a provision appointee would be appointed under the understanding that they would not be eligible to run on the following election? So that way, as an appointee becomes more of we depoliticize it by doing that in a way. At least I would hope it allows us to depoliticize it. Just a thought.
Emily?
I don't think that I hear the critique that it's not that it gives someone an advantage, but I think the the bottom line is that we're trying to ensure that that every voter in the city has full representation, and that we have a full board and can undertake the full work of the board. It's not ideal to have an open seat, and so it's also not ideal to make an appointment. But that is tradition. That is for many government offices, elected offices, how you fill open positions. Again, it's not an ideal situation, but it enables everyone to have full and the same representation, and also to enable the board to function, to the full extent. So it's not ideal. I think the idea that you're gonna then preclude someone from running is, I wouldn't support that, because, for instance, if I were able to make an appointment in District 5, I would want to look for the most qualified person, member of the community, what have you, in terms of meeting a whole set of different categories in terms of leadership and involvement. And I wouldn't want to only pick someone who wasn't interested in running. And I think that too often, it's a big commitment that we're making in running and seeking and serving. And I think that there's not always, a huge number of people who are kind of willing to put their hand up and do it. So I would support this as proposed, but figuring out the timeline so it's not this temporary, so there is more continuity in terms of who is serving. So as Mr. Rodriguez says, it's for the duration of the term for which the seat is open.
And what about alternatively having, if the next upcoming election is more than, say like 2 months away, 60 days, then automatically a vacancy triggers a special election, so that, that way it would be elected rather than appointed, but you would get it filled for the duration of the term.
It's just the cost involved in that. So if we decided that this, we thought that it justified the cost.
Yeah. I mean, in my mind, I think the last cost estimate on running an election I heard was like each election costs like $10,000 or something like that. And there's always, for a smaller election, we've done it differently, where maybe we don't have all the polls open. So I think there might be ways to even get the cost down. So my thoughts, I don't know. I think the cost of elections are kind of worth it to me.
I would, let's try and get an updated cost estimate, but if it's in that ballpark of $10,000, I would support that. I think it's a more democratic process to trigger an election than to have someone make an appointment. But I guess I was thinking that it might be cost prohibitive. So maybe we can get an updated cost on that. But I'd also be interested in what the other committee members and board members think of that.
Yeah. Other thoughts on that, Adam, Yusuf, Roberto?
For me, on the whole, this was new to me, and I'm not finished processing or coming up with my opinion on it. Kind of writ large in terms of the election issue. If our other recommendation that's further down, I believe, to make smaller districts and remove the at-large, seems that it would target an election to a specific district, which would reduce the cost. So there's a synergy there. That's what I have to say right now.
Yusuf? Anything?
I think it's hard to tell someone to not run for an election is kind of like their right, but I don't know how the appointing works, but I would say instead of the chair of the board, what about the whole board appoints that person? That's just a suggestion.
Yeah, in that vein, we do have the appointments committee. So I didn't know if it shouldn't run through a committee versus a chair if we were going to go in that direction.
So maybe this one we need to kind of think about some more and get updated cost estimates on elections and bring it back. What do you know what our plan is in terms of when? I mean, I know we want to get this out as soon as possible, but we also want to make sure that we have adequate, feedback from the full board. So
this was on our agenda. This is on our agenda for our meeting on Tuesday.
Oh, okay.
But we
okay.
But we can try and get some questions answered in that time.
Okay.
I appreciate Mr. Youssef's idea of having it go through the appointments committee, but I haven't seen that done elsewhere in terms of filling seats, and I worry that could get very messy when it's 9 people trying to fill an open seat. So I don't know. It would be interesting to understand if that. I know that's not done in Portland, but I can't. I'd be surprised if it's done elsewhere. It seems like it could set up a very problematic process and outcome. Again,
Yeah.
not to suggest that appointments are a good way of doing things either. Then the chair appointing is a good way of doing things either. It's a stopgap, right? And so it's just figuring out like what is the right stopgap. But what I'll take back is trying to figure out from, I see Mr. Rodriguez's hand is up, but trying to see what is the updated cost of elections. And certainly from my standpoint, I would be I think the most democratic outcome would be to trigger an election, automatically trigger an election if one or more seats is gonna remain open for 60 or more days.
Yeah, that would be my preference. Roberto?
Yeah, I didn't realize that we had the duration of the vacancy to consider, but was this all discussion framed under? Because I guess it's different. For example, District 5 now is going to have almost 2 years of a vacancy versus if Anna and I move on to the council, we're looking at 1 year versus somebody resigns with 6 months left. So does a longer term maybe trigger a different path? Can we explore that for some, maybe?
I think it's the process now, right, is that a vacancy goes just until the next regularly scheduled election. Is that right?
Right. And I guess I'm saying, should we consider 2 different pathways? One for appointing someone who needs at 6 months versus need to replace someone who's going to be here for the next 2 years.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Adam?
Yeah, this is going to be a little messy external processing, but where I'm at is that I understand some of the problems we're trying to solve is that it's not good to have vacancies on the board, that it is onerous to have an election system that requires someone to run essentially twice within 6 months, and that we're looking for a solution to fill those vacancies with less barriers for people to be in those seats. The election option and certainly fulfills our democracy criteria, and building off of what I'm taking away some of what Roberta said. It sounds like there could be, because I don't know how this stacks up in terms of the term staggering system, like if that needs to be upheld, and not start tweaking how many seats are open at a time. So it sounds like there could be, if a vacancy was going to last for more than 60 days, but less than a year, it's an appointment. And if it was going to be for greater than a year, then it would be a special election or something of that nature. Is something I'll socialize that kind of a concept, but that's where I'm at, and I'll stop there.
Yeah, so I don't know if we have a kind of a consensus on this at this point, but we do have some questions to answer. I think that, we can sort of flesh it out between now and next Tuesday, and then, we can offer whatever amendments need to be made at that time. So shall we move on to the next one?
Sorry, muted. The last one was eliminating at-large seats and making district seats smaller. This one might deserve to be higher up in our list. I said that this meets the principles of making our local governance both more democratic and more participatory. However, I think that there are others on the board and on this call who have stronger views about this than I do. So I'm going to maybe stop there and we can have a discussion about it.
Anyone want to start us off? Adam?
Yeah, I support the movement towards smaller district seats. As I understand it, would improve representation and opportunity to run. This also comes with the question about, is the body of 9 sufficient, or should it be expanded? I think that will be visited across the council as well. And I think it would be worthwhile stating an opinion to that effect along with this. And I think 9 is adequate. I think a larger board would be less functional, but I think the district representation would be a good way to go. Oh, and just one other thing, at a meta level of this document, I know you've been thinking about it as almost like a 1 through 10 ordered. I think we may consider as a kind of like tier 1, tier 2, or just some other organization that allows for it to not to be so precise on the ordering. That was just the idea.
Anyone else on this one?
I don't have incredibly strong feelings about this one. I think I see the merit in both increasing or having smaller districts and increasing participation, but I also I see the challenges in having a larger number of board members or a larger board. I've been when I've gone to the national board associations annual conferences, you get to talk to board members from all over the country, and you hear all sorts of different structures that they have, different numbers of memberships, certainly different ways to approve budgets, a lot of what we're discussing today. But one thing that I think I've heard over and over is like the sweet spot of like the membership number, particularly for a district our size. It's like that 9-member board. So that is, and even when you hear people that have like the 12 members or like the 11 or 13 members, they're always like, yeah, we just have like one too many. So I would say that.
Yeah.
What I've heard, that might be anecdotal, but what I've heard. And
if we did move to district seats, but we kept it at 9, the districts would get smaller anyway. I think, we talked about this on the last Charter Commission, and we kind of, took it off our plate pretty early. And I think partly it was maybe just the complexity of it. I know some of the, the discussions around the merits of the issue were, obviously that districts have the capacity for better representation. You don't see a lot of the at-large counselors, for instance, going to like all the district meetings, and so they, there's a lack of accessibility or perception of that. And the other thing that we talked about, as I recall, was the dynamic between kind of off peninsula and on peninsula. There's a geographic split that lines up with an ideological split, I think. And the at-large seats have historically played a role in that, although I'm not sure that that's the case today. So it just an interesting kind of food for thought. But, I mean, I guess the merit to the at-large seats is that you have somebody, looking at the big picture, somebody who's not kind of bound by what's happening just in their district, to be able to make decisions for the whole. So that's something to think about. But back then I would have supported district seats. I think that if the commission decides to do this, they're going to then have to think about, okay, what does that mean in terms of like, who obviously, who goes and who stays among who's currently elected, and so it will get very complicated. And I think that might have been one of the major reasons that we decided not to do it last time. We had to think about that for the mayoral election because we were, replacing one of the at-large seats with an elected mayor. We had to think about, okay, well, whose seat is that going to be? And it literally meant that one counselor, basically lost their seat for that. So that's just some thoughts about how this issue kind of comes up and gets talked about. Adam?
I thank you. And I can pause if somebody else wants to say something first.
I don't see any other hands up, so go ahead. Oh, Yusuf, did you want to?
Oh, yeah, thank you. Thank you. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead, Adam. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I hope you're okay. Don't go off screen. That makes me more worried. I can't see that you're okay. Okay. My thoughts as I work my way through this, I think I still land on supporting smaller districts, but when I think about the barriers of the at-large, one is the larger number of signatures required, and then it's the fundraising piece. So if the clean elections piece is in place, that addresses one major component of it. And then I think some other stuff might be a little theoretical, and I'd be curious to look at some more research, what it looks like if other places have made this shift. And I'll say I'm operating out of a place of not fully vetted, like some insight and some personal I don't know, biases or preferences or assumptions, that sort of thing. But I haven't looked at a full body of research on this.
Mm-hmm. Yusuf, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Sorry for that. I'm not fully understand the large role in general. They, I think they pretty much do the same work as a district representative. But what I'm thinking about is eliminating that position may become obstacle to new people, new generation who are motivated to run for office, because some district may have a very good candidate who stays there for 20 years. And I always tend to believe that change is very needed. And so that's one point I can see, but I'm not fully understand. I would not say this is better than this.
Emily?
I guess I wonder if we're trying to act by Tuesday, and I do think time is important because it sounds like the Charter Commission's work is proceeding at a decent clip. I wonder if we take this one off the list. This one feels like I have some instincts, but it also feels kind of out of my wheelhouse. I don't have the expertise. I have some, I have some unformed, feelings about it. So this one to me feels like one that for me, I think we could leave off, and perhaps if it does sound like many of the charter commissioners, when they were running, were talking about this, and if it's something that they move forward, perhaps they'll consult with us as a body that it would affect, and then we could weigh in at that point. And then just on the number, to what Mr. Rodriguez raised in terms of the number of board members, I also strongly believe that 9 is the sweet spot for the school board. I think it would be harder to have a bigger board, and that we would. I think I don't know. I see a lot of challenges with more board members. And I think if what, so that's where we get to, maybe, this, so anyway, I'll stop there. So I would suggest perhaps thinking about leaving this one off for now. Or if someone is able to take the lead in terms of like a deeper dive on it, that might be a way to go as well.
Adam?
I have a both and for you, Emily, that we say something to the effect that we know that it may be approached, and we know that we have we believe 9 is the right number, and if the commission was to take it, we look forward to consulting on them with them and learning with them, and then offering our opinion then, so that it's not noted, but we don't have to take a position now, aside from the total body size.
Yeah, that was my thought too, is maybe, we don't necessarily have to have it be a recommendation from us, but something that, we're interested in, we see some value to this, and we're looking forward to following their deliberations on it.
Yeah, almost like a no recommendation, but certainly that way we don't lock in. No, we like what we have.
And so maybe that's something for a very short cover letter.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I'll note, and Mr. Youssef, does that align with what you're thinking as well? Are you comfortable with that approach?
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
Okay, thank you. So the other two issues, which again, we need more clarification from AGA, were procurement and independent bonding authority. So I think we just hold on those for now because we don't have the full legal picture. And I got a very quick explanation from the superintendent, but I think he also had some follow-up, and that AGA was gonna provide a follow-up memo with the remaining issues.
Okay. Okay, so that gets us to the end of this. Emily, do you feel like you have what you need from this committee to bring this to the board on Tuesday?
I believe so. I guess my one question is I heard Mr. Burke suggest that we kind of organize it in tiers rather than sequentially like this. And I guess it would be helpful to hear to have a discussion about that so we can move it. I can make any changes to how we present the information. And I'm very open to other approaches. Just was trying to, I think a tiered approach could work as well. So interested in what the others have to say.
Since I raised the issue of tiers, I'll say I hadn't worked through the document to see if it worked neatly. So I guess I look to you, Emily, first of all, like, do you see it fall out that way as a way that you would do that as you were closest to thinking about the order? Or does it feel like I don't know what the metaphor or the linguistic term is, but just a fool's errand to try and head in that direction?
I mean, if I were to do tiers, just again, off the top of my head, I would do budget autonomy with the voters deciding, which is so much better than budget autonomy. So I will stop saying budget autonomy. Thank you, Adam. Non-citizen voting and clean elections is tier 1, and the rest in tier 2. I guess my only worry is, and perhaps this is unfounded, but if the Charter Commission, if the Education Committee was saying, well, we'll give them like 2 of these and 1 of these, or I wonder if we create kind of an easy way for there to be trade-offs, or I don't know.
And in reality, there's 5 items that we're putting forward as I do the counting. So it seems a little irrelevant to try to put it into tiers. It's a small number. It's not a dozen that we're trying to sort out and make sense of. So, and yeah, I don't want to fall into that trap of what you were just describing as a potential.
Oh, can I ask a question? Are all of these recommendations going to the education committee for the charter, or are some of these going to the governance committee?
Well, perhaps they could go to multiple committees. I think we definitely want to get them to the education committee because that's the committee we just presented to. But I think we could send the memo to both committees and CC it to the full charter commission.
That's kind of the way we categorize it, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like they've already, because some of these are new that we're bringing to them that kind of maybe are not on their list already, and some of them are on their list already. So for the ones that are already kind of on their work list, I think they've already put those out to subcommittees. So some of them I think non-citizen voting will go to their election committee because I think that's where that issue has already gone. But I think if we just send it to the full commission, then they, will figure that out. Yeah, I don't have any problems with the order the way it is, to be honest. If we were grouping them, my feeling is that some of them are more to deal with kind of, I don't know what the right word is. I want to say managerial or, administrative or, and others are more principle based. And so perhaps that's a way to think of it. But at the same time, like Adam said, there's only 5. And I think the way we have them makes sense to me.
Okay, so I will, I'll take the feedback from today and update this document and circle back with Javier about particularly the CIP one. I think needs work from staff and try and get clarity in terms of when we might get that updated legal memo from AGA. And then assuming all of that falls into place, I do expect this to be on our agenda for Tuesday. But I think there is a bunch that needs to happen before then. So we'll see.
Okay. So that's it for our agenda. Unless anybody has any final thoughts or anything else they wanted to talk about, I will call for a motion to adjourn.
I'll just foreshadow. It looks like I'll be absent on Tuesday's meeting because I'll be out of town with family.
Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Made by Roberto, seconded by Adam. All those in favor? It's unanimous, and we're adjourned at 7:09.